This is eTurbo News in Honolulu with our daily breaking news show. Please stay tuned. Aloha and good day. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from Breaking News Show in Honolulu, Hawaii. Breaking News Show is a new show we have done a while ago for eTurbo News. Now we invite other syndication partners like eTurbo News to join us. You find us at breakingnewsshow.com. And with me, as always, is Dr. Peter Tarlow in College Station, Texas. Peter, I know you're desperate to know how the weather is here in Hawaii. It's a beautiful sunny day, quite warm. And I think it's going to be just a wonderful weekend for anyone here on vacation to enjoy our beaches and our hiking trails. But take a lot of water because it is hot outside. How's everything in College Station?
Well, as you can see, I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and what you guys call aloha shirt, and that's because as beautiful as in Texas, and it is quite beautiful now with especially the wildflowers, it's still there's nothing like Hawaii. And even when you get to the Hawaii, just landing at the airport, it smells differently. There's a sense of flowers in the air. So it's a beautiful day here in Texas. Also, it's in the 80s, which is around 27 degrees Celsius, blue skies, but lots of wind. It is a very windy day here. So my hat almost blew off. Anyway, I think maybe this beautiful spring weather might be a sign that not only is spring springing forth, but also that the world of tourism is starting to recover a little bit. And I think that's really an important theme that we're starting to see in the Caribbean, in South America, in Asia. We're seeing the first signs of real recovery. For example, Saudi Arabia, I think today announced that it will be taking up to 1 million people on the Hajj. And that's the biggest number since the beginning of COVID. So again, that's really, good news. It shows that we're not at summer, but we're not in full bloom yet, but we're beginning to recover, and that's really good.
Yeah, and this is kind of echoed also by our friends in the Caribbean. And I know, for instance, Jamaica is very happy that the CDC in the United States announced for Jamaica to be now on the lowest level of any COVID threat. They're on level number one. And just months ago, they have been on the highest level, 4 or 5. I don't know what it is.
Four, number
So
four.
that's very heavy. And we did a story yesterday on Adam Stewart, who is the CEO for the Sandals Resort. And of course, Sandals is one of the largest all-inclusive Caribbean resort chains based in Jamaica. And of course, his friend, Minister Edmund Bartlett, are quite happy about this development, and so is the rest of the Caribbean. I know
Yes.
Barbados just returned from what they say an extremely successful world travel market in Latin America, in Sao Paulo, and they're actually looking to expand their reach also heavily into the Latin American market, what is potential with Copa Airlines. And
Yes.
Copa is the carrier for Panama, is connecting all of Central and South America and beyond as a Star Alliance member. And they're now flying to Barbados, what is good news for Barbados. So we have a lot of good
Yeah.
news on the
Yes.
horizon when it
We
comes to
do.
tourism.
Absolutely. And of course, Copa Airlines in Panama. Panama is really the hub of all of the Americas, the entire Western Hemisphere. And that makes it really important. On the other hand, one of the things, and I don't want to throw cold water on our success, we do have to be careful about issues of infrastructure. I think Puerto Rico today is going through a major blackout and has had an electrical failure, which put millions of people into darkness or without electricity. And one of the things I think the world of tourism needs to think about is we are incredibly dependent on the electrical power grids. And if the power grids go down, wow, everything from elevator stops to people's inability to use their credit cards to be able to pump gas. And so all those things are really major issues. And one of the things I think we have to always be worried about with the war going on in Eastern Europe is somebody gets a bright idea to attack power grids. And therefore, I think the world of tourism should be really pushing governments to make sure that we have the best protection possible against one, a cyber attack, but two, against an attack along our power grids. Because without electricity, the world of tourism cannot exist today.
Yeah, it's not only the world with tourism. I mean, we're looking at hospitals, we're looking at essential
Sure.
infrastructure, police, and I mean, anything and everything is dependent on tourism and in our energy. So that is definitely a threat, especially now in times of very big uncertainties. And well, the travel and tourism industry, Peter, is trying to come together. Major industry will be meeting in Manila in about a week. I will be there. I'm looking forward flying to Manila. This is the World Travel and Tourism Council annual summit. The last summit, you remember, was kind of the first event
In Cancun.
ever in Cancun, Mexico. And what is kind of notable is at the last event, the Saudi Arabian delegation showed up in full force. And 3 months later, the CEO for the World Travel and Tourism Council at that time, Gloria Guevara, became the top advisor of the Minister of Tourism for
Right.
Saudi Arabia. And she will now be on the with the Saudi Arabian delegation at the WTTC. So that's going to be some interesting
Yes, yes,
development.
yes. To say the least, the Middle East is actually one of the bright spots in the world. I think one of the things we have to be sensitive in the tourism world is we are doing better, and there's no doubt about it. And people are going on vacation, but at the same time, unfortunately, throughout the world, there is a tremendous amount of suffering, and somehow we need to be able to balance those two. We because of war in Europe doesn't mean that the world should stop by any means at all. On the other hand, we cannot just go along our business and say, well, there's a massacre here and a massacre there, and we just can't really worry about it. It's not my business. We do need to take into consideration everything that's going on in places such as Ukraine and the terrible, really massacres that are happening. I think today a missile was sent and over 50 children and died, if not more. So I haven't looked at the exact numbers, so I don't want to be, you know, give a definite number, but I think around 50. Uh, that's a tragedy that the world is going through. On the other hand, you do have to live, and we do need to help people still travel and do things. And Manila should be really exciting. I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful time there. So there's two sides of that story.
Peter, I'm wondering what your opinion is. The United Nations voted um, against Russia in suspending the Russian Federation from the Human Rights Council. And when you look through the countries that are voted actually with Russia to remain in the human rights courses, and countries include Iran, includes Ethiopia, noticeable in Africa, includes
Yeah,
China, and there are a number of countries that are neutral and didn't want to vote, but actually includes Mexico or
right.
the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia. How do you feel the tourism industry, if at all, should react to these votes? I know we at World Tourism Network have taken a clear stand with our Scream campaign to support Ukraine. And we have been urging travel and tourism players like Marriott, for example, to pause their operation in Russia. But now we're looking at this vote from the United Nations, and the countries, I want to name them, that actually voted with Russia is Algeria, Belarus, Bolivia, Burundi, the Central African Republic, China, Congo, Cuba, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Gabon, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Mali, and we have a few more, Nicaragua, of course, Russia, Syria, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, and Zimbabwe. What do you
Yes.
think about this, Peter?
So first of all, the Human Rights Council is a joke to begin with. Look at the nations that are on the Human Rights Council: Syria, Iran, Algeria, Russia, China. So every one of those countries that's on the Human Rights Council is doing something terrible to its own people. So right away you have to question, why does this Human Rights Council even exist? Because it's a real tragedy. Um, I think the United States for a long time had boycotted it because we just thought it was terrible. Now the other side of that, and I think the philosophical question you're bringing up is, do you go to a place uh, just for the value, the tourism value of it, or is there a political or ethical value in where we choose to go or not choose to go? And you can make that argument in both ways on some level. Some people argue that tourism is separate from the politics. We shouldn't combine politics with tourism. On the other hand, there are people who say no, tourism is like an industry and you shouldn't be supporting people who do terrible things. Now, it's even really bigger because we know that many of the leading corporations in the United States, such as Nike or Disney or Apple, are very much involved in using almost slave labor to make their products, while the people in China, in Eastern China, uh, Western China, I always get that confused. In Western China, you have almost slavery going on. So, how do we go to China? Does my not going to China uh, change Chinese policy? Or when, especially when large corporations such as Disney and Nike are very much participating in the Chinese economy? Or do I just say I have to separate that? And that's a philosophical question that I think needs to be thought through on an individual basis, on the and on the large scale basis, because there's the individual's personal decision, would I go, and then there is the group decision, should I go or not. As a child, I don't feel that way right now, obviously, but as a child, it was after World War II, and I couldn't imagine visiting Germany, or I didn't even want to hear the German language because we were so fresh from the Holocaust. Now, of course, it's 70 years later. Germany has shown that it's not the same country as it was in the 1940s, but there was a big boycott of people going on that level. On the other hand, people do go to countries that are less than sterling. We see there's a huge look. They had the Beijing Olympics, and should those Olympics have taken place when the Uyghurs are being persecuted in maybe close to genocide? That's a philosophical question that I think the tourism industry needs to really debate very carefully. I think your point is a very good point for discussion. I don't know if there's a direct answer yet or not.
No, and there probably isn't. This world is divided, as much divided as it can be right now, and we have to be careful. It's a matter of peace and war, and that's a matter of life and death. So I think we have to be extremely careful what we
Yes, yes,
say, who we say it to, and how we say it. Because
yeah.
tourism is an industry of peace, is a custodian of peace, and hopefully this can remain and show to be
Right.
true through this crisis.
And even that as a custodian of peace, you could argue in two ways. I don't want to go to that country because it's not peaceful, or I because this country has problems, I do want to go and I want to show people. For example, there was a large debate going on when the United States lifted sanctions against Cuba. Having American tourism to Cuba, does that cause Cubans to see a different perspective and get to know people and talk to them, uh, which therefore gives them new information they didn't have before? Or should we boycott Cuba because we don't like the government?
Yeah, and of
And
course, tourism is about people understanding each other. So I get your points here.
yes,
Um,
it's do now. One of the things we have to do though, if we do go to countries such as Cuba or China, or whatever, you got to actually go out and talk to people. In other words, just going to a resort and a gated resort, you arrive, go to the resort, meet a waiter, and have somebody make you your eggs in the morning, and then you leave, isn't really bringing a different world. It's like you're like a little island surrounded by a different sea. So we need to, when we do travel, to actually speak to people, get to know something about the place we're going. get to understand the culture, talk to people, let them know that we care. I, in the whole don't like boycotts. I think boycotts create problems. And to me, you're better off talking it through than not speaking. Because when you have silence, silence kills. It becomes a cancer that eventually leads to war.
Yeah, and talking about responsible tourism, it is important. The tourism industry in some destinations, like our own here in Hawaii, is shifting. The Hawaii Tourism Authority is putting a lot of emphasis in educating people before they arrive here about the Hawaiian culture. They want to be tourists to experience the Hawaiian culture, be part of it. I heard our friends in Barbados are on the same type of planning, and also in many other destinations, the fact of really getting people to know and to talk to becomes more and more important, because you can go to any beach destination and enjoy the beach. That's kind of neutral.
Right.
But in going into different parts of an island or a destination and actually get to know people is something what really adds so much value to human interaction and understanding.
Well, maybe that, we're now that we're beginning to come out of COVID and tourism is starting to bloom again, maybe that's something the tourism industry needs to think about. Maybe we don't want to just have isolated tourism as we had maybe in 2019. Maybe we need to offer new opportunities and new ways for people to experience human to human contact rather than just, I'm okay, here I am, I'm in Paris, I take a picture of the Eiffel Tower. No, I never need to speak to a Frenchman. I picture the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, and I go home. Maybe that's not where tourism ought to be going anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important actually to educate the younger generation, and not only educate, to prepare the younger generation to be involved in the travel and tourism industry and find a path. And with this, I wanted to introduce Professor Geoffrey Lippman. He's actually going to be talking about an event he's putting together in regards to climate change and the younger generation. Peter, let's give Geoffrey the microphone. It was nice seeing you today. We're going to see each other very soon. And for anyone who wanted to listen to watch our breaking news show, you can now go to our new home, breakingnewsshow.com. But of course, it's all interlinked on every and all of our websites. Thank you, Peter. And let's say,
looking forward to hearing Geoffrey.
Yes, looking forward to Geoffrey. Aloha. Aloha, as we say here in Hawaii, and good morning. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, and I'm joining you from the World Tourism Network in Honolulu. I'm the chairman of the organization, and I'm very privileged and proud to welcome Professor Geoffrey Lippman. He's joining us in Brussels. Geoffrey and I, we've been friends for more years than I think we wanted to have it true these times. And he is the man who has been leading really the world tourism industry in regards to climate change with his chairmanship of an Malta-based organization, SUNx. He will tell us a little bit more because we here at the World Tourism Network, and Geoffrey is part of World Tourism Network, he's also one of our founding members. We're bringing another aspect to our organization, and Geoffrey will tell us a lot more about it. Geoffrey, welcome.
Thank you, Thomas, or Juergen, as I think you're more widely known now. It's always a pleasure to pass time with you. And I'm particularly pleased to be here today because I want to talk about a major conference we're having at the end of this month on the 29th of April, an online conference, and it's called SEYS, S-E-Y-S, and it's the Strong Earth Youth Summit. Strong Earth Youth Summit. And we always hold it every year. This is the second one on the 29th of April, because that was the birthday of my friend and mentor, the late Maurice Strong, who basically started the entire UN system of sustainable development and climate change. Maurice was an amazing self-taught guy, left school at 16, and when he died in 2015, just before the Paris conference, he had 60 honorary doctorates to his name. He had been the Secretary General of the 1972 Stockholm Earth Summit. It's its 50th year celebration this year in June, and he was the Secretary General of that. He then set up UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme, and he was the first executive director. He took the first organization of the UN into Africa in Nairobi. And then he was involved in the Brundtland Commission, a founding member of the World Economic Forum Board. And in 1992, 20 years later, he was the Secretary General of the big Rio Earth Summit. And the Rio Summit is the organization that produced the Convention on Climate, the Convention on Deserts, the Convention on Biodiversity, and from that came the UNFCCC, the climate agency in Germany. And then when all that was finished and he'd done everything, in 2000, he launched something called the Earth Charter as a compact between the planet and its people. And he did that with Mikhail Gorbachev, the former president of the USSR, who had a sustainable organization called Green Cross. So this guy did everything. And I knew him for the last 25 years of his life since I was at the Rio conference. We became friends, we became business partners in China. And he was just once in a lifetime human being. So we started last year an annual conference for youth because Maurice believed that it's the next generation. You know, he was a kind of old Greta Thunberg, and he believed that it's the next generation that will have to clean up the mess that our generation is leaving. So we put a big focus on youth in SUNx Malta. We have a concept of strong climate champions. We have a diploma with the Institute of Tourism Studies in Malta, a 2-year diploma, 1 year of teaching and 1 year of internship. And every year we bring the young people together in a summit, and we're doing that this year. And I'm really pleased that we're working with you at WTN and as a partner in this, and it's just good to get the message out. And if anybody knows of any young people who are interested in what we call climate-friendly travel, which means a future system of travel which is linked to the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, and the Paris 1.5 temperature limits of 2050. So we're having a conference. We have some really interesting, different speakers, not the ones you see at the normal conferences. We have young people speaking. We have some of the best climate scientists in the tourism world. Daniel Scott, Professor Daniel Scott from Canada, Professor Susan Beckham from Griffith University in Australia. We have it's a 2.5-hour intensive discussion on how we can make the tourism industry into a climate-friendly travel system.
And we really, I think everyone is doing this for the young people, and it's really the future for the next generation or the younger generation. And it's very important that people actually know about the challenges, the dangers, so they can step in
Well, they
our.
know it, Thomas. The thing is about the young people is they know it because in school they have lessons about it. We never did. In school, they celebrate Earth Day. We didn't have an Earth Day. Not certainly my generation didn't have an Earth Day. First Earth Day was 1972. So, you know, it's a relatively new phenomenon, and they get taught it from the get-go. And they're better. They're just, you know, I have grandkids who are teenagers now, and I look at my grandkids and I look at my sister's grandkids, and they're smarter than we are. They're more tuned into these issues. They care more about nature than our generation ever did. They're more sensitive than we are. They're more gender equal than we ever were. So, you know, I'm think if there's any hope for our society in the future, it's with these bright young people.
And Geoffrey, just repeat again, when is the conference? Is it a public conference? Can anyone participate?
It's a public conference. It's free. It lasts for just 2.5 hours, 2 sessions. We set up one session for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and the Asia Pacific, and the right timing for that. It's kind of afternoon time in the region, and we did the same thing for the Americas. So there's 2 sessions on that day. It's free entry, and everybody who attends the conference gets 2 things free of charge: an electronic version of a book called Remembering Maurice F. Strong, and this book, produced by the European Centre for Peace and Development, has about 30 essays talking about how Maurice Strong helped to bring sustainable development to the world. And they'll also get a copy of the Earth Charter. And it's worth reading. I read it again recently, and it says everything that all of the alphabet organizations are now saying is where our future should be.
And I assume this book is also available maybe on Amazon to read on a Kindle, on a device, or is it only available as a hard copy?
No, you can read it on it. We'll get an electronic version which is capable of being read on a device, and that's free. And if you want to buy it, I think it is available on Amazon. Yes.
So we will definitely
save $15 by coming to the conference.
Absolutely. And if you wanted to know more about the conference, you will find it on World Tourism Network on WTN.travel. Just click on events, or you go to eTurbo News and click on events, and it will be listed. And we also are going to get more information on the WTN website if you wanted to go ahead and purchase the book, because it seems to be well worth it doing it. And I would encourage everyone to be part of this conference, and let us know after this how you found it and what you got out of the conference, so we can share it.
Yeah, and even better, Thomas, if I may add one thing, encourage your kids to tune in, because we're trying to make this interesting. We have some cartoons in the breaks for kids. We have some songs which have been created by people for climate-friendly travel. You remember Thomas Alston Koch, who was with us in Berlin at one of the ITB conferences. A Platinum Award singer has just sung the climate song that he created at the Dubai Expo, and he's going to be singing that song at the conference. So it's not going to be boring, usual conference stuff. The speeches, no speech will be more than 7 minutes, and it's all informative.
Wonderful. We'll definitely be looking forward to it. And Geoffrey, maybe we can talk again after the conference and see what the next step is, how we can work with this with you, SUNx, and the World Tourism Network.
Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. You know, we've been friends, as you said, for longer than we care to remember, but it's certainly more than 20 years. And I am a big fan of what you have been doing on rebuilding travel, what you did to launch the African Tourism Network, which was much needed, and what you're now doing with WTN. So it's not just a personal pleasure, it's a professional pleasure to be a friend and to work with you.
Yeah, that's mutual. Geoffrey, thank you so much for being part of our organization and so many things we have been doing over the years. And times are challenging, so let's stay on top of it. Let's hope this world could find its way back to peace. So all these dreams also about climate change would become a lot easier to handle under a better environment.
History tells us that all wars eventually end, and hopefully, that there are paths forward even for this terrible situation for our friends in Ukraine. And at the end of that, life goes on, and tourism will regrow, and hopefully it will be in the form of climate-friendly travel. So it'd be a better kind of tourism than we had before we were in the COVID crisis and now this Ukrainian crisis. So yeah, we'll still be here.
Yeah, and if anyone wanted to know what you can do and how you can get involved as a member of the travel and tourism industry in the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, we have a dedicated website. It's called Scream, like screaming out, scream.travel, and you find the banner on top of Itobo News. Just click on it, and you can also register and become part of it, bring in ideas. There's really an open concept right now, and we're working with our friends in Ukraine. We're working with the Ministry of Economics. We have an MOU, and we're working with the National Tour Organization in Ukraine and many other stakeholders. We're working with SCOL in Romania, and there's plenty of opportunities for the travel and tourism industry to make a difference in the ongoing conflict. But Geoffrey, again, thank you so much. And if you hear us now on Itobo News and you wanted to listen to us and watch us again, you can simply go to our YouTube channel. It's also linked from all of our websites. And you can find this and many other events. Or you can go to our Breaking News Show website, and you also find us there. But please stay safe, stay healthy, and let this become a peaceful world. And Geoffrey, I'm looking forward also watching the event later this month. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Thomas, and travel climate friendly.
Absolutely.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.